Hi there, and welcome to this lesson. Now, in this lesson, we're learning basic arithmetic, okay, and we would be learning about percentages. At this point, I'd remind you to set the video to play in 1080p HD. Very important that you do so you see everything clearly. And you can do so via the settings icon on the bottom right. And as the lesson progresses, if you have any issues at all, okay, please feel free to get in touch, all right, and we would be happy to help. Okay, so let's jump right into the lesson. So percentages. Now, what are percentages? A percentage expresses a part of a whole as a fraction of 100. Okay, so these have a very strong relationship with fractions. Okay, so it's just like you can express a fraction as a decimal. This is another method for expressing fractions, and basically these express fractions as, or they express a part of a whole as a fraction of 100. For example, you could have, let's use pizzas for example. You could have 10 pizzas and select 7 out of 10 pizzas, i.e., and you can express this out of 100 as 70 out of 100, and we pretty much write this out as 70%. Okay, so 7 out of 10 is the same as 70 out of 100, and we'll write this as 70%. So if you have a part of a whole, 7 out of 10, and you're asked to express this as a percentage, you have 70%. Similarly, if you have 5 out of 25, you have 20. 5 out of 25 is equivalent to 20 out of 100, and so we have 20%. 6 out of 15, we write this out as 66.67%. Now, how did we arrive at 66.67%? We'll find that out now. So if you have a part, so let's say you have a given quantity and you have a part of that quantity and asked to convert this to a percentage, this is how you go about doing so. For example, you could have 5 meters of wire and cut 4 meters out, and then you could be asked to express 4 meters as a percentage of 5 meters. And what you do is you write this out as a fraction. You have 4 out of 5, and then you multiply with 100. You multiply by 100, and what you have, 4 out of 5 multiplied by 100 would give you 80%. Now similarly, if you have 300 naira out of 1000 naira and you're asked to express this as a percentage, you simply have 300 divided by 1000 multiplied by 100, and what you have in the end is you have 30%. Okay, now sometimes you could be given a percentage and you could be asked to convert this percentage back to the part. Okay, so i.e. doing the reverse. Now you could have 30% of 1000, all right, 30% of 1000 naira, and to do this you say 30 divided by 100. Remember, a percentage implies a part, a fraction out of 100. So 30% simply means 30 out of 100. So if you have 30% of 1000, it means 30 out of 100 times 1000. And once you've done that, you would arrive with an answer 300 naira. Okay, you could also have 60% of 20 slices. Okay, and 60% is 60 out of 100, and you simply multiply this by 20, and what you end up with in the end is 12 slices. So that's the basic idea behind percentages. Okay, and we'll go ahead and solve some examples now. Example 1. Example 1 says a chemist recorded the reading of acid in a burette as 22.5 millimeters instead of 25 meters. Calculate the percentage error. Okay, so basically we have this chemist and he recorded the wrong value. The correct value was 25 millimeters, but he recorded 22.5 millimeters. Now, there was an error there, and we've been asked to calculate the percentage error. Now, before we can calculate the percentage error, the first thing we need to do is we need to find the actual error. Okay, and the actual error would be 25, the actual value, minus the measured value. So we have 25 minus 22.5, and the error in this case, the difference between the two values, is 2.5 millimeters. So now that we have the error, we can go ahead and find the percentage error. Now the percentage error is the fraction of the error. Basically, it's just expressing the error as part of the actual value. Okay, that's a fraction involving the error and the actual value. Okay, very important that you note that it's the actual value used, in this case the correct value. All right, so you have error divided by the actual value multiplied by 100 over 1. Okay, and we know that our error is 2.5 millimeters. Our actual value is 25 millimeters. We can go ahead and put that into that formula, and what we have in the end is we have 2.5 divided by 25 multiplied by 100 equals 10%. Very simple. Okay, let's do another example. Okay, so example 2. Now, example 2 says a boy recorded the temperature of a room with a percentage error of 5% less than the actual value. If the actual temperature of the room was 40 degrees Celsius, find the measured value. So what we have here is we have a young man, a boy, and he measured the temperature of a room. Now the actual temperature of the room was 40 degrees Celsius, but he got this wrong. He didn't measure correctly, and he measured and he obtained a value less than 40, we've been told, and apparently his error was 5% of the actual value, 40 degrees Celsius. So we've been asked to work for the measured value, i.e. the value that he obtained. And the first thing we want to do here is we want to find the error. We've been told that the error is 5% of the actual value. So we can say error equals 5%, 5 divided by 100, multiplied by 40, and we end up with 2 degrees Celsius. Now that we have the error, we can solve for the measured value, and we've been told that the measured value is less. In this case, something you need to note here, now the measured value could be less or more than the actual value. Okay, and but in this case we've been told that the measured value is less than the actual value, and that is why the measured value equals actual value minus error. Now if you had a situation where the measured value was greater than the actual value, so we had someone do a measurement and he gave a value that was actually greater than the correct value, we'd have measured value equals actual value plus error. But since we're dealing with less, we have measured value equals actual value minus error. Now we can go ahead and we have actual value equals 40 degrees Celsius, error is 2 degrees Celsius, and we can say that the measured value is 40 minus 2, and we have 38 degrees Celsius in the end. Very simple. Let's do another one. Example 3. Now example 3 says after 10% was deducted from Ayo's salary, he was left with 31,000 naira, and we've been asked to calculate his initial salary. Okay, so Ayo had a salary and he had 10% removed from his salary, and we've now been asked to calculate his initial salary. Now I'm going to show you something interesting you can do with percentages here. Now like I said, a percentage represents a part of a whole expressed as a fraction of 100. Okay, so if you have Ayo's full salary at the start, we represent this with 100. Okay, and we've been told that 10 was removed from this 100. How much does Ayo have left? Ayo has 90% left. Okay, so 100 represents the whole. If you remove, after a 10% deduction, we're left with 90%. And then we can go ahead and say what I is left with. I is left with 31,000 naira. Okay, no, 31,500. And what we have is we have that 90% of Ayo's initial salary is 31,500. Okay, and so 90% of x is 31,500, and we're obviously looking for x, and we can say that 90 divided by 100 multiplied by x equals 31,500. Okay, and when we simplify that, we can cross out some zeros there, 90 and 100 basically, and multiply that with x. We have 9x over 10 equals 31,500. We can cross multiply, and what we have is we have that x equals 31,500 multiplied by 10 divided by 9, and that would give you Ayo's initial salary as 35,000 naira. Okay, very simple. Okay, just one principle you need to take note of: if you have a whole, you have 100%, and when you take out 10% out of this whole, you have 90% left. So what he was left with was 90% of the initial salary, and you have 90% of the initial salary, x, equals 31,500, and from that point on, it's just basic maths. Okay, so let's do one final example. I think we have one final example. Now, example 4. And example 4 says a plot of land valued at 300,000 naira appreciates by 10% annually. Now calculate its value after 2 years. Now I'm going to tell you something interesting here. Okay, so basically we have each year the plot of land increases. That's what appreciates means. The value of the land increases by 10% every year, and we've been asked to calculate its value after 2 years. And just like we did in the last example where you subtracted 10 from 100, if you have an increase of 10%, you can actually add 10 to 100. So basically after the first year, we have 110% of the initial value. Okay, so we have the initial value is 100%. After the first year, we have 110% of the initial value. But we're told to calculate for 2 years. Couldn't we have just done 110% and add another 10 and make it 120% of the initial value? No, we can't do that. Okay, and for a very simple reason, because after the second year we would have 110% of the value after the first year, and finding 120% of the initial value is not the same as finding 110% of the initial value then finding another 110% of the value after the first year. They're very different. Okay, so if you ever faced with a question like this, you say a plot of land valued at 300,000 appreciates by 10% annually, calculate its value after 2 years. You calculate its value after the first year. Okay, now is that value after the first year that will increase by 10% again? Okay, so you need to calculate twice, and we'll go ahead and do that now. We say 110% of 300,000. We have this, and we'll end up with 330,000 naira. Okay, and if you do that again, so that's after the first year. Now after the first year, we have another 110% of 330,000 naira, and what we have is we have 363,000 naira in the end. Now something you notice, if you did 120% times 300,000, I think you would end up with 360,000, which is obviously wrong. Okay, so very important, you need to note when you're given a question like this, you need to calculate for the first year, calculate the initial value, calculate the value after the first year, and then for the second year, calculate the value after, find the percentage for the value you got from the first year. And you could have a third year and you just keep doing the same. Okay, and that is how you'd end up at your correct answer. And that will bring us to the end of this lesson. Okay, and yeah, bye for now.